Emily sat by the window of her suburban home, watching the evening sky fade into shades of orange and pink. On the surface, everything about her life looked perfect. She had been married to David for 7 years, living in a beautiful neighborhood where the lawns were neatly cut and the houses stood proudly side by side. To anyone looking from outside, Emily had everything: stability, comfort, and a husband who provided well. But behind the walls of her home, she felt an emptiness that only grew heavier with time. David was a good man, but his work had taken over their lives. What started as a few late nights at the office had turned into constant travel and endless meetings. Their conversations had become shorter, filled with quick exchanges about bills, groceries, and schedules. Emily couldn't even remember the last time David had asked how she was feeling, or when they had laughed together over something silly. The love that once made her heart race had been replaced with quiet dinners, polite nods, and long nights alone. She tried to fill the silence with books, movies, and phone calls to friends, but nothing erased the loneliness that settled deep inside her. Often she'll lay awake at night listening to the clock tick, wondering when her marriage had stopped being about love and started being about keeping up appearances. She missed being seen, missed being touched with warmth, missed the feeling of being alive. It was during one of those evenings, when the sky was heavy with the promise of rain, that she met Marcus. He had recently moved into the neighborhood, a Black American man with a calm, confident presence. Emily first noticed him while carrying groceries from her car. A bag slipped and apples scattered across the driveway. Before she could bend down, Marcus appeared, offering to help. His smile was warm, his voice deep, yet gentle, and his simple kindness struck her more deeply than she expected. From that small moment, a new connection quietly began. A few days later, she saw him again while tending to the flowers in her garden. He stopped to say hello, and they exchanged a short conversation about the weather and his move into the neighborhood. Emily found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in a long time. There was something about Marcus that felt different, an ease, a warmth, a sincerity she had been starving for without realizing it. That evening, after David had gone to bed early to prepare for another business trip, Emily stepped outside to breathe in the cool night air. The streets were quiet, the lights from the houses glowing softly in the distance. To her surprise, Marcus was sitting on his porch across the street reading a book. He noticed her and waved. She hesitated for a moment, then walked over. Their conversation began with small details: how he liked the neighborhood, how he was settling into his new job, how different the seasons felt compared to where he grew up. But soon, the conversation grew deeper. Marcus asked about her life, her dreams, her work. Emily felt her walls slowly breaking down as she shared more than she usually did with strangers. She admitted that life had become quiet, that she often felt alone even when she wasn't. Marcus didn't judge her, didn't offer empty advice. He simply listened, his eyes steady and full of understanding. For the first time in years, Emily felt noticed. She felt like someone cared to hear her voice, to know what was inside her heart. That feeling was dangerous, but also intoxicating. When she returned home, David was asleep, his suitcase packed at the foot of the bed. Emily stood in the doorway, her chest heavy with the weight of her choices. She looked at her husband, the man she had once loved fiercely, and wondered how something so strong could fade so quietly. The next day passed like any other coffee in the morning. David rushing out with barely a goodbye, Emily moving through the motions of work and errands. But her thoughts kept circling back to Marcus. His smile, his calm voice, the way he looked at her as if she mattered. It was a dangerous pull, but she couldn't deny it. The following week, when David left on another 3-day trip, Emily found herself stepping outside in the evening again. Marcus was there, watering his plants. They greeted each other with the comfort of familiarity, as if they had known each other far longer than a few weeks. Emily laughed more that night than she had in years, the sound surprising even herself. She realized how much she had missed the simple joy of connection, the spark of being seen. Every moment with Marcus felt like a secret she carried inside her chest. She told herself it was innocent, that they were just neighbors, just friends, but deep down she knew it was more. There was a subtle electricity in the air when he spoke, a quiet tension when their eyes met. It wasn't reckless or loud, but it was real. And the more she felt it, the more she feared it. Emily returned home that night with her heart racing. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection, trying to understand herself. Was she just lonely? Or had she truly outgrown the life she once thought was perfect? She pressed her hands against the sink, tears stinging her eyes as she whispered to herself, "What's happening to me?" The truth was simple. She was waking up to feelings she had buried, to a longing she had ignored. And Marcus had been the spark. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of purple, Marcus looked at her differently. His eyes lingered for a second longer, his smile softer, almost vulnerable. Emily's breath caught. In that small moment, she realized this wasn't just about filling loneliness. This was something deeper, something that scared her, but also made her feel alive again. When she returned home, David called from his hotel room. His voice was distant, tired, already thinking about the next day's meetings. Emily answered politely, her words short, her heart elsewhere. As she hung up, she felt the weight of two worlds pressing down on her, the life she had built, and the feeling she could no longer deny. That night, she lay awake once more, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts filled not with emptiness, but with Marcus. For the first time in years, her heart beat fast with longing. She didn't know where it would lead, but she knew this: her life had quietly changed. And there was no turning back. The evenings grew colder, and Emily found herself looking forward to the quiet hours when she and Marcus would talk. At first, their meetings seemed innocent, almost casual. He would wave from across the street, she would smile. And soon they'd find themselves sitting on her porch with steaming mugs of coffee between them. What began as short exchanges stretched into long conversations that went deep into the night. Emily hadn't felt this kind of ease in years. With Marcus, words flowed naturally. He asked about her favorite books, the music she loved, the places she dreamed of visiting. Unlike David, who always seemed distracted, Marcus listened. He leaned in, his eyes never drifting to his phone or the clock. He made her feel as if her thoughts mattered, as if she was more than just a wife waiting at home. One evening, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves, Emily confessed more than she had planned. She told him how distant her marriage had become, how she often felt invisible in her own home. Her voice trembled as the words left her lips, and she expected judgment or, worse, pity. But Marcus didn't react that way. He simply nodded, his expression steady, his silence gentle. When he finally spoke, his words wrapped around her like warmth in the cold. "You deserve to feel seen." "Emily," he said softly, "you deserve to feel alive." The sentence struck her heart like a bell, clear and undeniable. She had been waiting for someone to say those words, even if she hadn't realized it. She tried to brush it off with a small laugh. But the truth in his voice lingered long after the night ended. Inside, David was already asleep when she returned. She stood in the doorway, watching him breathe deeply, his face calm in the dim light. He looked like the man she had once loved so passionately, but the space between them now felt unbridgeable. Emily turned away, lying awake with Marcus's words echoing in her mind. The days that followed moved quickly. Emily kept up with her routine's work, errands, the endless cycle of chores, but something inside her had shifted. She found herself choosing her outfits more carefully, brushing her hair with more attention, checking her reflection before stepping outside. She told herself it was silly, that it didn't matter, but she knew why she did it. She wanted to look her best when she saw Marcus. Their talks became a quiet rhythm in her life. Some nights they laughed over small things, his clumsy attempts at fixing his mailbox, her stories about embarrassing moments from college. Other nights their voices dipped into softer tones, speaking about regrets, dreams, and the ache of loneliness. Emily discovered layers of Marcus she hadn't expected: his love for old jazz records, his quiet determination to build a new life in the neighborhood, the way he carried both strength and gentleness at the same time. The connection between them was undeniable. It wasn't loud or reckless. It was steady, like a flame growing brighter with every passing night. And though nothing physical passed between them, Emily could feel the tension building in the space between their words, their silences, their lingering glances. One evening, the sky heavy with clouds and the smell of rain, Emily almost didn't step outside. But something in her pulled her to the porch. Marcus was already there, waiting, as if he knew she would come. They sat side by side, the world around them hushed, the sound of distant thunder rolling through the air. That night, as she walked back into her home, Emily felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because Marcus had reminded her that she wasn't invisible. Heavier because she knew she was walking a dangerous line. She pressed her palms against the kitchen counter, whispering to herself, "This is just friendship. Nothing more." But even as she said it, her heart knew the truth. Days passed and Emily tried to put distance between them. She told herself she wouldn't step outside, wouldn't linger near the porch, wouldn't allow herself to search for him with her eyes. But loneliness was a powerful force, and the memory of his voice, his steady presence, pulled her back. The next time they met, the air between them felt different, stronger. She laughed at one of his jokes, then realized how close he was sitting, their knees almost touching. She could feel her heartbeat racing, an unfamiliar warmth rushing through her. She quickly shifted back, but Marcus noticed. His eyes lingered, soft yet knowing. "Emily," he said gently, "I don't want to cross any line that would hurt you, but I need you to know I see you, and I care." Her breath caught. She wanted to answer, but her voice failed. She could only nod, her emotions a storm she couldn't name. Later that night, when she slipped into bed beside David, guilt weighed heavy on her chest. David stirred briefly, muttering a tired good night before turning away. Emily stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. She loved her husband, or at least she believed she did, but why did her heart beat so wildly for someone else? The conflict tore at her. By day, she moved through life as David's wife, keeping the house in order, answering polite questions from friends, showing up at dinners with a practiced smile. By night, she found herself waiting for the quiet moments with Marcus, where her heart came alive again. And so it continued to worlds pulling her apart. One rooted in duty, the other in a passion she could not name. She didn't know how long she could balance both. But she knew this. Every conversation with Marcus drew her deeper into a place she wasn't sure she could escape. One evening, as the wind carried the smell of approaching winter, Marcus's words pierced through the silence between them. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but filled with something unspoken. "One day you'll have to decide what you truly want. You can't keep living in between." Her chest tightened, fear and longing crashing inside her. She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. The truth was too heavy, too dangerous to admit aloud. And as she walked back into her house that night, she realized her life was no longer the same. The path ahead was uncertain, but her heart had already crossed a line. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's life became a careful balance of duty and desire. She woke each morning as David's wife, moving through her responsibilities with practiced grace, but by evening her thoughts drifted toward Marcus. Every time she saw him, her heart beat faster, and every night she lay awake, torn between loyalty and longing. The connection between them deepened in ways Emily couldn't ignore. It wasn't built on grand gestures, but on the quiet details, the way Marcus remembered the small things she mentioned, the way his laughter filled the air, the way his silence carried comfort rather than distance. She hadn't expected their bond to grow this strong, but now she craved his presence more than she dared admit. Her feelings for him were not reckless, yet they were dangerous all the same. She tried to tell herself they were just friends, but the truth pressed against her every time their eyes met. With David, conversations felt hollow, reduced to routine questions. With Marcus, every word carried weight. Every glance stirred something alive inside her. One chilly evening, Emily sat outside with Marcus as the first flakes of snow floated in the air. She watched them melt against the porch rail, her thoughts tangled in a storm she couldn't escape. Marcus spoke about his family back home, about his struggles to start over in a new city, about dreams he had kept tucked away. His honesty touched her, and for a moment, Emily forgot the walls of her marriage, the ring on her finger. She simply listened, her heart soaking in every word, when silence fell. Marcus looked at her with a tenderness that sent a shiver down her spine. His voice lowered, almost a whisper. "You're not happy, are you?" Emily froze, caught off guard by the question. Her lips parted, but she couldn't bring herself to lie. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered back, "I don't even know what happiness feels like anymore." Marcus didn't move closer, didn't reach for her hand, but the way he looked at her made her feel as though he already held her heart. "You deserve better than living half a life," he said quietly. His words echoed in her chest long after she returned home. David was sitting in the living room reading through emails on his laptop. He looked up briefly, offered a small smile, then went back to work. Emily stood there staring at him, feeling a pang of guilt that burned inside her. She loved the man she had married. But the truth was undeniable. She was no longer the same woman. And their love was no longer the same either. That night, Emily cried quietly into her pillow. She wasn't crying because she didn't love David. She was crying because love alone wasn't enough anymore. The days that followed were heavy. Emily tried to avoid Marcus, but her resolve weakened with each passing hour. One afternoon, she found herself standing by the window, waiting for him to come home. When his car finally pulled into the driveway, she caught her breath, her heart racing with a mixture of relief and guilt. Later that evening, she walked outside under the excuse of needing fresh air. Marcus was there, waiting, as if he knew she would come. They sat together, their words soft, their laughter careful. As though both were aware of the line they were approaching, it wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper. Emily felt understood, seen, and cherished in ways she hadn't felt for years. Every moment with Marcus reminded her of the woman she used to be before life became a routine of schedules and responsibilities. He awakened a part of her she thought had disappeared forever, but with every step closer. The weight of betrayal pressed harder. She knew her marriage was fragile, but it was still her marriage. And yet, when Marcus looked at her, she couldn't deny the truth burning inside her one evening. After a long silence between them, Marcus spoke with an honesty that left her breathless. "Emily," he said, his voice steady but full of feeling, "I can't pretend this is just friendship anymore. I care about you more than I should." Her chest tightened, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to deny it, to protect herself. She couldn't. "I care too," she admitted softly, her voice breaking. The words hung in the air, heavier than snow clouds above them. Neither moved, neither crossed the line. But both knew something irreversible had happened that night. Emily returned to her bed beside David, trembling with the weight of her confession. She stared at the ceiling, her heart torn in two. She was living two lives, one in daylight, one in the shadows of the night. Her guilt grew with each passing day. At dinner with David, she found herself distracted, her thoughts drifting to Marcus. She laughed at the right moments, responded politely, but her heart wasn't present. David noticed her distance, but instead of asking questions, he buried himself deeper into work. The silence between them widened, and Emily wondered if he already knew but chose not to see. The following week, as Christmas lights began to brighten the neighborhood, Emily's inner conflict reached its peak. One evening, Marcus walked her to the edge of her porch before she went inside. He paused, his eyes holding hers with quiet intensity. "You can't keep living like this," he said firmly. "One day, you'll have to choose. Staying in between will only break you." His words struck her with painful clarity. She wanted to argue, to find a middle ground, but she knew he was right. Her life was no longer simple. Her heart was no longer whole. Inside, David was decorating the tree, humming a Christmas tune under his breath. Emily stood in the doorway, tears threatening to spill. She wanted to step forward, to join him, to rebuild what they had lost. But her heart pulled her back, toward the man who had reminded her of love's fire. Emily felt trapped between two, Cruz, her duty as a wife, and her longing as a woman. No matter which path she chose, something would break. And with every passing night, the decision loomed closer, heavier. Unavoidable, she whispered to herself as she turned away from the glowing tree. How do I choose between the life I promised and the life I've found? But no answer came, only silence. And the storm inside her grew louder. Winter settled over the neighborhood, blanketing the streets in quiet snow. Inside Emily's home, everything looked peaceful, decorations on the mantel, lights glowing softly on the tree, but her heart was anything but calm. Each day she carried the weight of her secret. And each night the pull toward Marcus grew stronger. David, for the first time in years, began to notice the distance. One evening, while they sat at the dinner table, he put down his fork and looked at her carefully. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Emily," he asked, "are you happy with me?" The question hit her like a stone. She froze, her mind spinning, her throat tight with unspoken truths. She forced a smile, but the weight behind his eyes told her he wasn't convinced. That night, when David fell asleep beside her, Emily lay awake, her heart pounding. She knew the truth she had been hiding could not remain hidden forever. The next evening, after a day spent moving through her routine like a shadow, Emily found herself walking across the street to Marcus's porch. The snow crunched beneath her boots, the cold biting her cheeks, but her heart burned with urgency. Marcus stood when he saw her, concern in his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked softly. Emily's voice trembled. "I can't keep this inside anymore. I've tried to ignore it, to tell myself it's nothing, but it's not. You've reminded me of what it feels like to be alive, Marcus. But I'm terrified. If I follow my heart, I could lose everything I've built. If I don't, I'll lose myself." Her confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Marcus's face softened, his eyes filled with emotion. He stepped closer, though not too close, his voice steady. "Emily, I would never force you to choose. This has to be your decision. But no, this side care for you more than I ever planned to. That won't change no matter what happens." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she quickly wiped them away. For a moment neither spoke. The silence was filled with all the words they couldn't say, all the lines they couldn't cross. When Emily finally turned to leave, Marcus didn't stop her. He simply whispered, "Take care of your heart," inside her home. The warmth of the heater couldn't reach the cold inside her chest. She saw David sitting on the couch, his laptop closed for once, his eyes searching her face. He looked tired, worn down by years of neglect, not just hers, but his own devotion to work, to everything but them. "Emily," he said quietly, "I don't want to lose you. Tell me what's going on." Her throat tightened. She wanted to confess everything, to lay bare the truth that had consumed her. But fear gripped her. She shook her head, forcing a weak smile. "I'm just tired. That's all." David didn't push, but the sadness in his eyes lingered. Emily carried that look with her through the night, her guilt pressing harder than ever. In the days that followed, Emily moved like someone caught between two worlds. She cooked, cleaned, and attended holiday gatherings with David, playing the part of the devoted wife. But inside, her heart belonged elsewhere. Every song on the radio, every glance at the snow outside reminded her of Marcus. She was trapped in a storm she couldn't escape. One afternoon, while wrapping gifts, Emily broke down. Her hands shook, tears falling onto the paper as she whispered, "I can't keep living this way." She realized that no matter what choice she made, someone would be hurt. The only question was who. That evening, she went back to Marcus, desperate for clarity. He opened the door, surprised but calm. Emily stepped inside, the warmth of his home surrounding her, and looked into his eyes with all the pain she carried. "Marcus," she said, her voice breaking, "tell me what to do." He shook his head gently. "Emily, this isn't about what I want. This is about what you need. You can't keep trying to hold both worlds. It will destroy you." His honesty cut deep, but it was the truth she had avoided. Emily sat down, burying her face in her hands. "I feel like I'm losing myself. With David, I have stability. With you, I have life. But I can't have both." Marcus knelt beside her, his voice firm but kind. "Then you must choose. Not for me, not for him, for yourself. Because if you don't, You'll keep breaking a little more each day." Emily looked at him through her tears, her heart aching with love and fear. She wanted to stay, to let herself fall completely, but her mind screamed with the weight of her vows. She stood, her hands trembling. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Marcus's eyes softened. "You are. I believe in you, Emily. Whatever path you take, I'll respect it. But don't let fear decide for you." She left his home that night with her soul torn open. The snow fell harder, covering the streets, muffling the world. When she stepped back inside her house, David was waiting. He looked at her, his expression tired but hopeful. "Emily," he said, his voice low, "please just be honest with me. Do you still love me?" The question sliced through her. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her silence was louder than any answer. David's shoulders sank, his face turning away. Emily felt her heart shatter. That night she lay awake between two truths. On one side was the life she had promised, the man who had once been her world. On the other was the man who reminded her she still had a heart that longed for love. Both paths carried pain. Both carried loss. As dawn broke, Emily realized there was no easy ending to her story. No matter what she chose, she would leave part of herself behind. For now, all she could do was breathe, hold her heart close, and face the truth she had tried so hard to avoid. Her life would never be the same again.